Today, I'm going to be giving you guys the top 10 best builds in NBA 2K22 Next Gen. Before we do hop into things though, if you haven't done so already, like and subscribe. Helps you out so much, literally costs nothing, and takes 5 seconds. Also, let me know in the comment section if you guys have other build suggestions, and also which build from this video was your favorite. So for the first build of the video, we're going to be making a meta point guard build. Obviously, for the position, you do have to be a point guard. Next, for the body settings, for the height, I decided to go with 5'11". This is the perfect balance of being fast while at the same time having good defense. For the weight, you're going to want to go with 167, and then for the wingspan, you're going to want to go with 6 foot to get a 99 three-pointer. Now moving on to the attributes, first things first, for the close shot, I have this at a, yeah, you guys see. We're making a meta point guard, so you don't really need any finishing at all. Next, for the shooting, you're going to want both your three-pointer and your mid-range both maxed out. You can have 40 shooting badges, you're just not going to be missing. And then for playmaking, again, you'll have pretty much everything maxed out, and you'll have 38 playmaking badges, which is very, very good. And then moving on to the defensive / rebounding attributes, you have an 86 perimeter defense and a 91 steal. This build is definitely much more designed for 5s or 3s. It's not going to be as good on 2s. However, if you don't have a better option for a build, then you can run this on the 2s if you want to. And then moving on to the physicals, as you guys can see, I have a 90 speed, a 95 acceleration, and a 93 stamina. You'll actually get the +4 from Gatorade drills or gym rats, so the acceleration will become a 99. Also, I only have speed at a 90 because that doesn't help you with speed boosting or help you travel faster with the ball, and it mostly helps with off-ball movement. Now moving on to the takeovers, for the first and secondary takeover, I went with limitless range. In my opinion, this is overall just the best takeovers for a point guard, especially a point guard that's basically only going to be shooting threes. And then as you guys can see, I built a playmaking shot creator, which makes a ton of sense as a name. So for the second point guard build of the video, this build is going to be a bit more well-rounded. For the body settings, you're actually going to want to go 6'1", 163 pounds, and 6'10" wingspan. And you guys are going to notice I pretty much go defined for all my body shapes. And then moving on to the attributes screen, as you guys can see, we will have dunking on this build. You're going to have 22 finishing badges as well as elite contact dunks. I wouldn't recommend just spamming rim runs on this build, but definitely it will be able to catch a lot of contact dunks. And then moving on to the shooting, we have an 81 mid-range and an 86 three-pointer, as well as 27 shooting badges. Personally, I can still shoot very well with a low three-point rating. Having a low three-pointer doesn't mean that you can't shoot. You can still green very consistently, however, you just won't be getting bailed out with whites. And then moving on to the playmaking badges, as you can see, we have 33 of these. And overall, the playmaking is just very good on this build. And then the defensive / rebounding attributes and badges are also pretty good as well. And the defense on this build is going to be significantly better than the previous build, considering you're 6'1" with a 6'10" wingspan. And then also the physicals are pretty much identical. If you do want free throw on this build, what I'd recommend doing is dropping down your close shot to a 62. You can then get a 76 free throw. It's kind of up to you which point guard build you want to make. This one obviously has better dunking and defense, but worse shooting. And as you guys can see, I went with the exact same takeovers as before. I think even though you have dunking on this build, you're still going to be shooting mostly threes, so I went with double limitless range. And then as you guys can see, I have built a two-way threat, which tells me I pretty much made an all-around point guard build. So moving on to build number 3, for this build, we're going to be making our first shooting guard build of the video. For the body settings, you're going to want to go with 6'4", 175, and 6'9" wingspan. This is going to be a very good all-around build. So moving on to the attributes screen, as you guys can see with the finishing badges and attributes, they're not crazy or anything. You're going to have pro contact dunks, which is decent, I guess. And if your defender is playing way too high and you just want to take a 2, you can. Although definitely your priority is going to be 3-point hunting on this build. So moving on to the shooting attributes, you have an 88 three-pointer and 28 shooting badges, which is very good. Definitely this build is just not going to be missing whatsoever. And then moving on to the playmaking attributes, as you guys can see, these are very good as well. Sadly, on this build, you only have gold quick first step instead of Hall of Fame. And then finally, for defensive / rebounding, you have an 86 perimeter defense, a 91 steal, and a 66 block. So far, this is probably the best defensive build I've showed you guys. And then as you guys can see, the physicals are very good as well. It's not going to be quite as speed boosty or quite as quick as the point guard builds, but it's definitely going to be moving around very, very well. If you do want free throw on this build, what you're going to want to do is drop down your speed with ball to an 84. You can then get a 94 free throw. And And then moving on to the takeovers, for the first takeover, I went with Limitless Range, and I was tempted just to go double Limitless Range again, but I decided to switch things up with ankle breaking shots. And as you guys can see, I built a two-way 3-point playmaker, which I think is a very accurate name and also a very cool name. So for the fourth build of the video and the second shooting guard build of the video, we're going to be making kind of again just an all-around build. So for the body settings for this build, I went with 6'6", 180 with a 6'10" wingspan, and for the body shape, of course, I went with defined. For finishing, we only have 19 badges, which isn't crazy or anything, but you will get elite contact dunks, and you're definitely going to be yamming on everyone since you are 6'6" with a 6'10" wingspan. And then next for the shooting, you have 28 shooting badges and an 87 three-pointer. Again, you're just not really going to be missing very much on this build. And then moving on to playmaking, we have 28 playmaking badges, and you can ball handle and pass very, very well in this build. If you want to, you can bump up your ball handling to an 85, but personally, I don't use any of the 85 ball handle dribble moves anyways. Even though this build only has 20 defensive/rebounding badges, its defense is nuts. It is Hall of Fame clamps and Hall of Fame interceptor, as well as a 94 perimeter defense, a 90 steal, and a 70 block. Plus, you're 6'6" and pretty fast, and you're going to be able to keep up with those really small guards. So even though it doesn't have the most badges in the world, it's definitely going to be a very viable lockdown build. So moving on to the physicals, as you guys can see, they're just very good again. If you do want free throw on this build, what I recommend doing is dropping down your block to a 62. You can then get a 70 free throw. And if you want something more, just drop down your stamina a little bit. So moving on to the takeovers, I went with Limitless Range and Extreme Clamps. I think Limitless Range is, again, just the best takeover for guards. And then I went with Extreme Clamps because this can be a lockdown build if you wanted to. And as you guys can see, I've again built a two-way threat, which I guess kind of makes sense since I upgraded them kind of similarly. So for the fifth build of this video, we are going to be making a lockdown build. So for the body settings, I went with 6'7", 186, and a 7'4" wingspan. This is, in my opinion, the best body settings for a lockdown. Starting things off with the finishing attributes, as you guys can see, I have 17 finishing badges. But since you are 6'7" and have a 7'4" wingspan, as well as elite contact dunks, you're definitely going to be yamming on everyone. Next, for the shooting badges, you have 23 of these. You do have a lowest three-pointer, but definitely if you know your jump shot, you'll be able to green very consistently. Moving on to the playmaking badges, as you guys can see, it's pretty good all around. Sadly, you only have silver bullet passer, but I think that's good enough for a lockdown build. And then moving on to the best part of this build, the defense. You guys can see you have 31 defensive/rebounding badges, which is nuts, as well as Hall of Fame interceptor, Hall of Fame clamps, gold rebound chaser, and gold intimidator. This is one of those builds that can honestly lock up anybody, whether that's a guard or a big man. And then the physicals, as usual, are pretty good. If you do want free throw on this build, I'd recommend dropping down your pass accuracy to a 72. You can then get a 75 free throw, which is very good. And then moving on to the takeovers, as you guys can see, I went with double extreme clamps. I think these are the best takeovers for a lockdown build. And as you guys can see, I built a two-way finisher. I understand why it says two-way, but I'm a bit confused about the finisher part, considering we only have 17 finishing badges. So for the sixth build of this video, we're going to be making another small forward. Starting things off with the body settings, this time we're going with 6'8", 181, and still a 7'4" wingspan. And this is pretty much going to be like a stretch playmaker or point forward type build. Starting things off with the finishing attributes, as you guys can see, you have a 79 closed shot, an 86 driving layup, and a 92 driving dunk, as well as 22 finishing badges. Definitely, you're going to be catching a ton of contact dunks on this build. And then moving on to the shooting, which is actually quite good on this build. You have 24 shooting badges, and if you know your jump shot, you're going to be able to green quite consistently. And then moving on to the playmaking badges and attributes, as you guys can see, you have 24 playmaking badges. And even though you are 6'8", if you know what you're doing, you can definitely dribble very, very well. And then moving on to the defensive/rebounding attributes, as you guys can see, I have 29 of these. In my opinion, the defense on this build is not quite as good as the previous build, but if you want to, you can run this as kind of just like a tall lockdown build. And then if you want free throw on this build, I recommend dropping down your closed shot to a 73. You can then also get a 73 free throw. And if you drop down your stamina to a 94, you can get a 78 free throw, which is very, very good. And then moving on to the takeovers, I went with ankle breaking shots and then extreme clamps. There's honestly just something so satisfying about dropping defenders on a 6'8" build. It's honestly nuts. And as you guys can see, I built a two-way facilitator, which honestly I'm not super surprised by as a name, but it definitely can do way more than just facilitate and play defense. So for the 7th build of this video, we are going to be making a power forward. For the body settings, you're going to want to go with 6'9", 210, and a 7-foot wingspan. We're going to be making a popper type build. Starting things off with the finishing, as you guys can see, we have 25 finishing badges. As well, we have a 93 standing dunk, which is very good. And although this build is not going to be catching a lot of contact dunks, as a screen and roller, it's going to be very viable. So moving on to the shooting badges and attributes, as you guys can see, we have 28 of these. This is very important since we are a popper and we want to be able to green consistently. Moving on to the playmaking badges and attributes, as you can see, we have an 85 pass accuracy, and also we have a little bit of ball handling. Obviously, you're not really going to be the primary ball handler on this build. However, if you know what you're doing though, you can create your own shot. Moving on to the defensive / rebounding attributes, as you guys can see, we're pretty well rounded. We have 26 total defensive badges, which is very good. I do wish this build could have better defense, but it's definitely quite good. Moving on to the physicals, for the speed and acceleration, both of these are maxed out. You have a 38 strength, a 70 vertical, and a 91 stamina. If you do want free throw on this build, what you're going to want to do is drop down your driving layup to a 73. You can then get a 74 free throw, which is, in my opinion, good enough to hit free throws consistently. Moving on to the takeovers. For the first takeover, since we are a big man build, I went with See the Future. And then for takeover number 2, I'm going with Limitless Range. As you guys can see, I built a stretch glass cleaner, which is honestly the exact name I was looking for. Moving on to build number 8. So moving on to the 8th build of this video. For this build, we're going to be making a glitch shooting guard build. Now, I know I'm supposed to be making a second power forward build, but this definitely can run power forward. It just will say shooting guard next to your name, and you just have to make him a shooting guard in order to get these badges and attributes. If you don't know how to glitch your build, there's a video in the card up above. So as you guys can see on the body settings, I went with 2.05 meters, 106 kg, and 2.31 meters. This way, as you guys can see, you get a 99 defensive rebound. So starting things off with the finishing badges, as you can see, I have a 92 driving dunk and an 88 standing dunk, as well as 24 finishing badges. And you're definitely going to be dunking on everybody. As you guys saw on the previous build I just made, I only had like an 80 driving dunk. But on this build, since it is a glitched build, I can have a 92, which is nuts. Moving on to the shooting, we have 23 shooting badges, which is quite good. You're definitely going to be able to knock down free throws very consistently. You don't have any ball handling on this build, but you do have an 85 pass accuracy, meaning you can get Hall of Fame break starter and gold bullet passer. And then moving on to the defensive / rebounding, the best part of this build, you guys can see it's just all around nuts. You have 37 defensive / rebounding badges, which is crazy, as well as Hall of Fame interceptor, a 90 steal, a 99 defensive rebound, and for some reason we're able to unlock a 78 perimeter defense. And then moving on to the physicals, as you guys can see, they're very good. We are a little bit on the slower side since we wanted to max out our weight to get Hall of Fame rebound chaser. And then moving on to the takeovers, I'm going with Stuff Blocks and See the Future. These are by far the best 2 takeovers. You can flip them if you want to. And as you guys can see, I built a 2-way facilitating finisher, which I guess makes a little bit of sense as a name. So for the last 2 builds of this video, we are going to be making center builds. And for this first build, we're going with 7'3", 237, and a 7'7" wingspan. So starting things off with the finishing, as you guys can see, we have 27 finishing badges, as well as a 99 standing dunk, which is crazy. And then moving on to the shooting, we have 24 shooting badges, as well as a 79 three-pointer. And then moving on to the playmaking, as you guys can see, I upgraded the pass accuracy to an 85 to get gold bullet passer and Hall of Fame break starter. I'm pretty sure normally when you upgrade it to an 85, you get like 11 badges or something. But for some reason on a 7'3", you get 16. And then moving on to the defensive / rebounding, this is honestly very good on this build. You have a 97 block and you're pretty much going to be getting unlimited blocks. You only have gold rebound chaser and a 91 defensive rebound, which does suck. So for the final build, I'll show you guys a variation with Hall of Fame rebound chaser. And then moving on to the physicals, as you guys can see, they're very good as usual. I'm assuming most of you guys want free throw on this build, and if you do, you're going to want to drop down your offensive rebound to an 81. You can then get a 46 free throw. And if you then drop down your mid-range to an 82, you can get a 64 free throw. If you're looking for something in the high 60s, you can drop down your speed 1 rating and then get a 68. And I'm pretty sure that is good enough to be able to hit free throws consistently. And then moving on to the takeovers, as you guys can see, I went with post shot daggers and see the future. For this build, it's kind of up to you which takeovers you want to go with and up to your playstyle. As you guys can see, I built a versatile paint beast. Moving on to the final build of the video. So at last, for the 10th and final build of this video, again, we're going to be making a center. For the body settings, we're going with 7'3" and 237 again. However, this time we're maxing out our wingspan. Our finishing, I'm pretty sure, is a little bit better than the previous build. We're still going to have our 99 standing dunk. For shooting, pretty much the only thing we upgraded is our free throw. This way we can just knock these down consistently. And then next for the playmaking, again, we're going to have our pass accuracy at an 85. This way every single pass we throw isn't as scary. And then for the defensive / rebounding, as you guys can see, we have 40 badges, which is nuts. And on this build, you're just going to be getting infinite blocks and infinite rebounds. And then for the physicals, as you guys can see, they're quite good again. And then moving on to the takeovers, I went with stuff blocks and see the future. Again, the takeovers you choose are kind of just up to your play style. If you're a post scorer, go with a post scoring takeover. And as you guys can see, I built a paint beast, which is honestly such a fitting name. Thank you guys so much for sticking around till the end of the video. And if you did watch this entire thing, let me know in the comment section. There's a dribble tutorial on the screen right now. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'm out. Peace.